tariffs are paid by the consumer. No, tariffs are paid by the importing company. Actually, tariffs are paid by the foreign nation getting tariffed. Well, we all know the tariff bill is sent to companies when their imports get to customs, and they literally pay the tariff to customs. Yeah, but we all also know companies can't just eat that increased cost, so they end up raising prices on consumers to offset. And then that makes products from non-tariff nations more attractive, which will lead to companies doing less business in tariff nations and more in non-tariff nations. Well, if products from places like China who make stuff for dirt cheap are tariffed out of the market, products from non-tariff nations no longer have that cheap competition and then have more flexibility to raise prices on consumers. The issue is, for example, in China, the average factory worker makes $3 an hour, where it's $35 an hour in America. Even with, say, a 100% tariff, it is still cheaper for companies to build in China than America, so the companies will likely still import from China even with the tariff. Again, which they'll pass on to the consumer. Well, the company does a complex economic analysis called price elasticity, which basically asks, if we raise prices, will people still buy? If the answer is yes, they raise the price and pass on the tariff. If the answer is no, they might have to absorb some of the cost to stay competitive. And that really depends on how much competition there is from non-tariff nations for that specific product. Even in the cases where companies eat some of the cost, that means less profit for the importing company, which leads to less tax revenue for the government, which leads to less ability for the government to fund social services for the consumers. Well, the importing company will almost certainly simultaneously ask the overseas company they're importing from to eat some of the cost, and the overseas company is going to do a complex economic analysis called supply elasticity, which basically asks, can we find new buyers from other nations? If the answer is no, they must lower their prices and eat some of the cost. If the answer is yes, they can simply enter new markets. All in all, it's a massive amount of money coming out of the system and going into the hands of the government, who, if they do the right thing with that increased tariff revenue, can help the consumer or help the importing companies affected by the tariff. Like this whole video is about, we're affected too, right? And just wait until we reciprocate and put tariffs of our own on you.